It's worse.
Much worse than you think.
That climate change is happening slowly is a fairy tale. Perhaps as pernicious as the fairy tale that says it isn't happening at all. And that fairy tale comes to us bundled with other comforting delusions.
The delusion that global warming is an Arctic phenomenon unfolding slowly and far away.
The delusion that climate change is strictly a matter of sea levels and coastlines, not an enveloping crisis that spares no place and leaves no life untouched.
That it is a crisis of the natural world, not the human world, and that these two things are distinct.
The delusion that wealth can be a shield against the ravages of warming.
That the burning of fossil fuels is the price of economic growth.
And that growth and the technology it produces will allow us to engineer our way out of environmental disaster. None of this is true. So what are we going to do?
My sophomore year of high school, I went on an optional field trip to a small wilderness expedition school based on a carbon-neutral and organic farm and eco-community. We stayed there for 4 days, learning and becoming part of the workings of a self-sustaining system. We split wood, milked cows, worked on new solar panels, cooked community meals, and more. We even stayed in these little dwellings they called hobbit hills, which were literally mounds of dirt with pine needle floors and plants growing on top. It was a magical trip. Having grown up around people who led similar lifestyles to those on the farm, I was familiar with their mission and excited to learn. But there were definitely kids that were there specifically to get out of class. However, by the end of just a few days, there was a profound and visible shift in the way that they saw this place. By getting off of their phones and out into nature, by harvesting and cooking their own food, they rapidly developed an appreciation for what the earth has to offer. They participated wholeheartedly in every chore. They asked question after question on the subject of sustainable living. When it was finally time to leave, you could see that in many ways, these people had changed. Something had sparked in their eyes, an energetic shift was palpable. Just a few days' cohabitation with people whose mission was to live with love and respect for the earth had planted a seed within them, and it was clear that they would carry these ideas with them, going on to make changes in their own communities. Those who lived on that farm had a simple mission: to live with consciousness and an altruistic thought in harmony with the natural world. When we went there, that is what we witnessed. Yet even a small glimpse into the lives of the community created change. All we saw was their daily norms, their way of living, yet we were inspired. So the point of this is, find things that you are passionate about, discover your ideals, educate yourself. Live your life according to your principles. Live this way and others will see. Live this way and others will be inspired. What you create can inspire great shifts in the perspective of others, and that is what can change the world. Passion. Be someone else's inspiration by being the most authentic version of yourself. It truly makes a difference.
I have been very fortunate because climate change is the crisis of our generation that I do not feel or see the effects of it. This is because I live in the bubble of my environment. I have a supportive family, the privilege of education, and the luxury of a car and many other products at my disposal. The price of this lifestyle that I have grown accustomed to and engage with every day is that I am contributing to the destruction of a healthy climate without the concern that is so powerful for those actually feeling the effects of climate change. So with this information in mind, I decided I should join the green team and at least try to limit my consumption and remain aware of the effects of my habits. The result of my environment is that my connection and desire for climate justice is completely intellectual. It is a really ugly situation I find myself in because I am a relentless contributor to this silently lethal climate crisis without any visceral sense of worry or guilt because it becomes socially acceptable to ignore. So how do I do my part for the work that has to be done in order to have a less dark future than what we are making for ourselves? Well, I don't think the answer is feeling guilty and becoming a full-time activist in spite of this twisted system. That way of life, must come naturally, or else I would be lying to myself. And given that my deepest self is not emotionally attached to climate justice, I must find my own way to contribute. For instance, music is something I do feel the effect of, and I've been engaged with it all my life. I've felt the embarrassment and pressure of a performance as well as the satisfaction of awesome sounds. The truly effective way to address climate change is to activate my skills and passions that perpetuate energy within me and channel it behind climate awareness and action. All work that people do has an intention. I just have to work with the intention of challenging our culture to act through my passion and lifelong experience of music.
If I had one message to impart tonight, it would be a message to love. A memory of mine has recently been brought to the forefront of my mind. A young child I was, looking out my window. I was thinking about the suffering of the world, how some have more than plenty and others not enough to even live. I thought about how competition is the primary mode of relation. This didn't feel right to me. But the emptiness I felt when I tried to envision another way brought fear. I couldn't see what the point would be if not competition. Now, I am 17, writing this looking out a friend's window. These days it feels like all I can do is dream of another way. My fear to dream was dissolved when I was encouraged to look outside of the beliefs I had been exposed to, when someone cared enough to show me there is another way. The hateful state of the Earth's collective consciousness, embodied by climate change, is so big it seems to paralyze most people, to encourage them to fend for themselves even more strongly. The only way for us to change is together, collectively, in love.
First and foremost, we need to recognize and be aware that there is a climate crisis, and it's up to us working together to try and solve it. We must recognize that we, as individuals, are all connected to each other and the earth. We must meet each other and our mother where we are and treat each other with love, compassion, and respect. We must start on the small scale and be conscious and considerate of our day-to-day actions. We need to reduce what we throw away, use reusable materials when we can, and of course, recycle. We need to be aware of whether our actions are helping or hindering the state of the environment. If we all take small steps, such as picking up litter when we see it and buying locally, that can lead to big change. If you see something, take action. If there is one thing we should all do, it would be to live in the moment and consciously take small action steps. Collectively, these small action steps can lead to greater change. Moving to a larger scale, we need to reduce carbon emissions, and a simple step in this process is reducing food waste. There is so much food that is wasted by individuals, grocery stores, and restaurants that could be given to those in need. We throw away about 40% of all the food we produce, and therefore the energy required to produce that food. However, there are apps such as Food Cowboy, Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, and Meal Connect that help restaurants and grocery stores donate leftover food to the hungry. This is a reminder that we are all connected, and we all need to help each other. We need to take what we have, make the most of it, and be grateful for it. We must remember that small, collective change leads to big change. Vermont is filled with close-knit, active communities. If these communities consider the climate crisis, the steps they can take, and work together, we can make greater change.
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'd like to recite a poem for you all that I recently encountered, which I found to be a deeply reflective metaphor for the responses that I'm often faced with when discussing issues like the ones portrayed in the film tonight. The poem is called Whose Job? And it's a story about 4 people. These 4 people were named Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could be doing it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what needed to be done. I don't know the author of this poem, but given the context of it, I actually intentionally did not attempt to discover who wrote it, as I found its underlying message dramatically enhanced, knowing it could have been written by anybody because it reflects everybody, and nobody is separate from its message, even if you're the somebody who wrote it. Now, to relay this poem back to the topic, the world is waking up to the reality of our global situation and the devastating dilemma that we all face. And the bitter truth is that our world leaders simply aren't going to take action the way we need them to right now. They just won't. But that truth doesn't have to lead us to a detrimental cynicism while forcing ourselves through the motions of the capitalistic wheel without purpose. Because even though our world leaders refuse to take action, that does not strip us, the people, of our responsibility to do so. It's easy to make excuses. It's easy to point blame. It's easy to convince yourself that there's nothing meaningful enough you could do in your circumstance anyways. The victim can be a comforting role to play. But what we have to understand is that mindset is going to be our doom. That mindset is what's keeping the power away from where it always has been, with the people. I'd be lying if I said I was immune to it. The biggest fear of the pyramid dictators is that we, the people, wake up to our power. That we, the people, realize that if we all commit, then there's nothing they could ever do to stop us. You see, the story of everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody can really be simplified to a story of only two characters for the meaning to be best understood. And it's that if everybody doesn't take action now, then nobody will be left to do it.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight. My name is Willow Carr, and I want to be a paleontologist when I get older. I want to someday earn the title of Dr. Carr, but at the rate our climate is changing, I will much sooner become a fossil than ever find any. I have been raised in the hills of Vermont, just like very many of you. Unlike you, I will not get to achieve my goals. I will not get to grow up and return here with my family. I will not get to share the stories of my prime with my loved ones unless we do something about this climate crisis. I do not want to spend the remainder of my life seeing all of Vermont melt into ruin before my eyes. Our home is being destroyed. There are so many ways for us as individuals to take charge of sustaining our Earth. Yet our individual negative contributions to climate change are only part of the issue. The largest effect on climate change are the fossil fuel-dependent, money-guzzling corporate industries. Once we stop supporting large brand-name companies, the greedy man shall fall. Nature will rise again. The importance of making ties with our local farmers and independent business owners is beyond compare. It is crucial that we make these bonds with our neighbors. It is our responsibility as community members to become leaders by supporting our local businesses and getting to know them. So please, go and teach them the lessons you learned today through this and the film. Indulge them in the importance of running an honest business. Show them that the earth and the people stand as equals. Sustainability and love go hand in hand. Please join forces and take down selfish and dangerous corporations to rebuild Earth's natural glory. Thank you.
You are the solution. It is often difficult to get up in the morning with the weight of the ecological crisis on our minds. The weight only becomes heavier and the routine more uncomfortable when we clear our minds of delusions. It is difficult to be aware. We are in a critical turning point in human history that is black and white between extinction and survival. Sometimes I don't want to wake up, not to the current state of the world. But in the end, every morning I stand up tall, looking straight into the eyes of those responsible for eco-genocide with courage and unwavering devotion to Mother Earth. I don't lose hope because I know that I am the solution and that you are the solution and that together we are the solutions to the ecological crisis and all the issues facing humanity. Together we can make the world a better place. Together we can secure habitable living conditions for our children's children. By working on yourself, your local community, and reducing your carbon footprint, you are helping every living creature that walks on the land, swims in the ocean, or flies in the sky. We, the community of Woodstock, in the state of Vermont, can be pioneers in this great transition, leading as role models for other states in the US and across the world. Together, we can put the cannibal giant back to sleep.
I think it's a Dostoevsky quote. He said, "Perhaps it's beauty that will save the earth." The sound of the whales is something that can help us all just to feel this kind of community of beauty that we're part of. When I hear the whale and respond with a cello, it's really just, it's about the beauty of the sound. I know that there's some discussion, some mystery about what the whales are actually trying to convey with these extraordinary assortment of sounds that they make. But the other thing is to simply relate to it as beauty.
Whales. The thing that drew me to whales was I fell in love with whales.
As we speak the truth of our pain for the world, we discover our interconnectedness with each other. That comes forward when we read together from the list of endangered and threatened species. Read them just like with a drum beat, you know, polar bear, Bengal tiger, swallowtail butterfly, wolf, ferret, harp seal, African elephant. To think of these species and wonder at their strength, their beauty, their wisdom, their weirdness, their particularities.
We are creatures here just like all the others. We didn't create them, and we have no right to destroy them. We're losing species today at 1,000 times the rate that species do normally go extinct. We are killing off the rest of the creation.
As soon as you take a moral principle like not harming life really to heart, your eyes see the world in a different way. You're almost compelled to witness the suffering as you see it. Now, the hard part is actually being with that suffering, not turning away from it, not simply to judge it or dismiss it or be angry about it, but to actually see it. And in that seeing, the opportunities for action will arise. We can't all take care of all the problems in the world, and we can't be in all places at once. So we can be most thoroughly in the place where we are.
If we will have the wisdom to survive, to stand like slow-growing trees on a ruined place, renewing, enriching it, if we will make our seasons welcome here, asking not too much of earth or heaven, then a long time after we are dead, the lives our lives prepare will live there, their houses strongly placed upon the valley sides, fields and gardens rich in the windows. The river will run clear as we will never know it, and over it bird song like a canopy. On the levels of the hills will be green meadows, stock bells in noon shade. On the steeps where green
And as global warming occurs, of course, these glaciers are all melting. They're going away very fast. Now you're talking about a couple of human lifetimes. There are whole cities, though, to name a random example, Los Angeles, which are utterly dependent on glaciers. There's a lot of people out there who say once the problem is sufficiently severe, science will find a way. And the answer to that is baloney. Science will find a way which, if you can afford it, might work, sure. But let's put it this way. Suppose Los Angeles ran out of water. Solve that one. And the answer could be, oh, yeah, well, you put in a desalination plant, a giant desalination plant. Yes, but what happens to the price of water at that point? And how much will you enjoy paying, $1 a gallon for water just to wash your car or water your lawn? Science will not solve the problem at any sort of reasonable expense level to pay for things which are the services that are performed free by the environment. Somebody has actually put a price on that, has guessed at what it is. If I recall it correctly, I think it's the free services performed by the environment for humankind worldwide come to $30 trillion a year. Well, that's no problem. I mean, we'll just raise the $30 trillion and perform those services for ourselves. No.
Those of us who think of ourselves as Christians are called on not only in the Old Testament to defend creation and steward it wisely, something we're clearly failing to do. We're also called upon over and over and over again in the Gospels to love our neighbors as ourselves. We're failing there too. I mean, at the moment we are drowning our neighbors, giving them mosquito-borne diseases, destroying the chances for them to grow their crops, making life all but unbearable, and we're doing it so that we can keep on living exactly as we're living.
We see the impacts of it on a daily basis. Longer summers, hotter summers, the rain is later, and when the rain comes, it's also much more. I just feel it's unfair that people in the South or the global South has to make all these adaptations when the cause of the problem, the root problem, is in the North. The way we experience the developed world's impact on local community is around seed.
Historically, we were colonized in different forms. Slavery was one, education was one, but now the corporations, Monsanto and other allies, the giants, are also colonizing Africa and all of us through food, through seed. The Monsanto seeds is not only seed, it's a seed with a technology of herbicide, with a technology of insecticides, and these seeds you can only plant it once. You can plant it the second time, but the yields get lower and lower. When you plant it for the third time, there's no crop. So we say no, no.
Mother Earth and Father Sky and Brother River and the animals, they all have feelings and they listen to what we say and they feel what we do. My people, the elders, also believe that all these environmental catastrophes that happen to the communities around the world, those are all cries for help. Mother Earth is crying out for help. We are killing her so people can make a profit. I pray to Mother Earth. I pray to the spirit people who come out early in the morning and look for us to see if we're awake. I also pray to the sacred mountains of the Navajo. I feel this really deep sense of connection to my people.
I'm not such a good soul that if I thought this had no chance of succeeding, I'd waste my time flailing around at it. I think we have a chance. I think the game is not yet over and the outcome not yet clear. but I sure don't think it's going to happen automatically. I think the only hope is to build big movement.
A true citizens movement that is big, that is tough, and is determined to make deep change. If there's a model in living memory that we need to try to find again, was the civil rights movement. People understood that they had a deep grievance, and they understood that the system they were working in was illegitimate, and they set out to demonstrate that.
We are going to act. Power responds to a demand, and we have to let that demand be heard, and it's time to step outside the system and do some things that we haven't done before.
We got to be careful as we do civil disobedience. We shouldn't make young people the cannon fodder for it. I think it should be those of us who've spent our lives burning fossil fuel. We need to make very clear who the radicals in this scenario are. They're not people demanding an end to fossil fuel burning. The radicals are the people who are willing to fill the atmosphere with twice as much carbon as there used to be and just see what happens.
There is movement building around the world, and what you're seeing is that the movements are connecting. So the environmental movement is connecting to the sustainable food justice movement. The food justice movement is connecting to the women's movement. The women's movement is connecting to the LGBTQ movement. So we just simply cannot look at these problems in silos.
What needs to be done is connect these groups, which are prefiguring in their work the future world. After all these years of being deprived of meaning in our lives, we have an opportunity to fight for something real. And it's not just a fight, it's really a much more joyful existence to live in reality.
This climate crisis, it could be some of the worst sorts of things we will have seen here on the planet as the disasters pile up, and there's more of them, than we can deal with. So the question is there about hope. Is hope necessary? What is hope in this context? And I think my answer would be hope is this equilibrium, this steady mind, the willingness to be present for what it actually is, and a curiosity, a kind of, well, what will it really be?
When you're in the middle of a big adventure, you don't have time to decide whether you're hopeful or hopeless. That question can bring you out of the present moment. It can throw you into imaginings and conjectures when all your energy should be right here in the moment.
I don't think there's any hopeful outcome from this where we avoid all messiness. Somehow the tooth fairy is going to come down at the last minute and make everything okay. It's not going to happen. We're headed into a very, very difficult time. It's going to be an extraordinarily painful transition for our species and for the rest of the natural world. That said, how painful it is and how many of us survive and how much of nature survives, all of that depends upon what we do now. So can you imagine having the opportunity of being alive at this moment in history when so much is at stake and choosing to go to sleep instead?
If you want an adventure, boy, what a time to choose to be alive, to get a chance to find out what you have inside you in terms of vitality and alertness and courage, what you have to discover in terms of what we can do together. Don't waste time in self-pity over darkness. Don't waste time trying to figure out better circumstances that you might like. You're born into this, and you're here to love it and to see that it goes on.
I cannot turn my eyes. I cannot count the cost of all that has been broken, all that has been lost. And the light on the
We have a story in our mythology about a figure called Giwok. Giwok is the cannibal giant. The role of Giwok is to sleep deep in the forest. He only wakes up when the Earth Mother calls out in distress because human beings are consuming faster than she can produce and harming her faster than she can heal. When he awakens to that call, his role is to lull humanity into a false sense of security and get them to dance. And he gets them to dance with him faster and faster and consume more and more until they actually consume themselves to death. And then the Earth Mother has the space to heal and renew herself. And the only way for us to put Giwok back to sleep is for us to wake up. Right now, we're in this space where the dance of the cannibal giant is going on, and there's an awakening happening, and can we reach critical mass within our awakening to avoid another extinction?
Andaliwisi wanahamugasad na jil banawapskek, and dilnabamakawasus banawapskek, and nagakakagus niltibayik, nilidahazyu and Dayan. My name is Sherry Mitchell, and I am from the Penobscot Nation, and my family is Bear Clan from the Penobscot Nation and Crow Clan from the Passamaquoddy tribe at Zabayik. And I'm very happy to be able to be here with you today. So foolishly, they said that I could talk about whatever I wanted, and they gave me any guidance. I'm going to do just that. Like all of you, I'm very aware of what's going on in the world around us. A lot of people have likened this time to the dark night of the soul for our larger soul group, for our species, for the planet. But what I believe is that we are in the long, dark birth canal, and that all of the pressure that we're feeling is the evidence of that birth taking place. And so when we understand that, we have a choice to stay in the darkness and to feel squeezed by all of the unknowns, or to step into the light and help birth this new way of being in the world, to be midwives to it. There's this quote by this poet that I've come to love, and it's also one of Simon's favorites, Drew Dellinger, where he says, "We are awake because our great-great-grandchildren will not allow us to sleep." And so people are waking up all over the world.
There's a cat. Barley, guess who's coming? Barley.
In many ways, it's an act of devotion to be able to be of service to the next generation. So an element of what we're doing here is not only to create a very beautiful life for those who are here in this community, but to be of service to the conditions of the wider world.
We have in the heart. And we as women have a lead on this, and maybe that's why the Dalai Lama says women need to be leaders now. These young people, I notice a very distinct response to the fact that we're offering something that has to do with leadership. They want to figure out what to do with their life and how are they going to make a difference. And it's pretty clear that that invitation into service is something they're responding to. You know, it's not about what profession you're going to have and how successful you're going to be, but how are you going to learn to shift from the meanness focus to benefiting the whole. It's hard to do these things. Speaking your truth, not easy.
On a dry day, if we have the team to keep up with it, we'll come through and we'll nip the leaves or the branches that have the blight. We'll pack all those into a bucket or into a wheelbarrow. We'll take them up to the fire ring and burn that blight.
We've never even had to put out really the call for we need more team. We have people just asking, can I come? I'm interested. I've heard that you're not only farming, but you've got all this incredible sense of community going on.
It's been
mostly women this summer, which has been interesting. But I've been feeling like a strong sisterhood here. Even though Russell's a man, he is a part of it too.
So we come to the breakfast table and we've found our way into the day silently. The poem is read and we open into a sharing of how we're each doing. And that's an important part of the day, is that we have 3 meals where we do sit together.
Poem from Mary Oliver. Snake. And here is the serpent again, dragging himself out from his nest.
And then we have a work period that generally goes for 3 or 4 hours, depending on the program needs. And that is the time where we tend the animals, milk the cow, move the paddocks, and basically all hands on deck. So we might be a community of 6 or 8 or even 10 of us spreading out across the land to tend all the things that need tending. And I don't know that they're all going to create something like this, but I think what they're getting is a sense of who they are and how to put their own pieces together.
It's a very open community. I mean, we're all strangers to each other, the people that came for this particular program. But already, you know, we're learning so much about our personal lives, and it feels very natural.
Lift the torso up enough to come flat, parallel to the ground. So really what we're teaching and what we're encountering here is an ancient story. It's not at all a new thing. It's going back to what was known throughout time, how our own human evolution has evolved to be in relationship to land, to animals.
It's very hard to be aware. It's very hard to be aware of what's going on. I recently just brought a child into this world, and that was maybe one of the hardest aspects of that, is realizing what I'm bringing him into. They're helping me deal with that emotional taxing part, for sure. We're still talking about all those hard issues, but also ways to resolve it in our own bodies so we can actually do something about it, not be so clouded by that heaviness. They are both very free people, Russell and Jillian. I want to become kind of like them.
A body of work that's inspired me is Joanna Macy's work and her model of activism, because I feel so strongly that very serious things are happening around the world, and shouldn't we be off in the city? Shouldn't we be off at this demonstration? Shouldn't we be here or shouldn't we be there? And I feel that, but I also very, very strongly know that what we're doing here in our contemplative practice and in our regenerative work with food systems and care of the land is meaningful and important. And I mean, I feel like we're on our purpose, in a sense, in our dharma.
Not everyone that comes here is going to stay here. Some people are going to go out and they're going to start doing these campaigns, or they're going to start helping with community gardens or with a local food bank, or they're going to go and volunteer in other countries. It's planting seeds. That's really what we're tapping into here, is literally and figuratively learning to plant seeds.
Jesus, how he crouched in the dark for 2 nights, then floated back above the horizon. There are so many stories, more beautiful than answers. I follow the snake down to the pond. Thick and musky he is, as circular as hope.
The way that we are living in the world right now is disconnected from the source of our survival. And if we don't start addressing it, then the call for that awakening is going to continue to get louder and louder and louder. This is not the time to wallow in despair and fear. This is not the time to waste our energies pointing fingers and casting blame. This is a time for us to organize. It's a time for us to galvanize our efforts and to unify in ways that we never have before to protect what is sacred and what is precious to us.
I mean, I think as activists and people involved with social change, sooner or later we have to connect with the recognition that the way we do something is more important than what we do. If we're viewing our human survival in terms of human awakening, then our activism needs to lead to that awakening. If we frame this in terms of an attack on Bank of America, then the situation rigidifies and we create a resistance to our own movement. Why? Because it is painful to be told that you are wrong. It is even more painful to be told that you are wicked. Meanwhile, you're just going to work and raising your family and trying to support, the lifestyle that you've been brought up to support, et cetera, et cetera. However, if somebody's engaged in some kind of destructive behavior, funding the pipeline, which is going through the Dakotas right now, which is Bank of America is doing that. They're investing in that project. We want to stop you from doing that. Or even if we have the power, if we have the leverage, we're going to stop you, right? Absolutely. It's the transformational movement is not about no limits. It's not about kick back and let everything happen because it's all groovy anyway. It's not.
According to John Locke, the land has no value until it is put into some type of purpose, and that purpose relates to the market. People feel like, oh, what are we going to do? We have these huge power brokers that are controlling the outcomes right now. What I think that we do is we organize locally, we create policies, regulations, ordinances that are for the benefit of the health, safety, and well-being of local residents. We need to act quickly and unify quickly to be able to start doing these types of things in our small local areas in order to obstruct the type of harms that we're worried about. Exerting just enough force to be able to hold back the tide of harm without harming the other. And then behind that protective shield, we actively work to create the type of world that we want to live in. And so it is up to us to form a more perfect union, not just in regard to politics, but in regard to the way that we engage one another, in the way that we relate to the natural world. That is our responsibility. We can't be asking for anything without taking responsibility for creating it.
I started doing African drumming when I was 6 years old in first grade, and my sister joined with me, and then I believe she did it for 2 years.
Something like that.
And I've been doing it for 5 years.
Our daughter Nishima is 13, our son Emmett is 11. They've spent most of their childhood on this land. Before that, they spent the early part of their childhood living in urban south end of Albany. It's interesting because they're so immersed in the experience, their ability to reflect and see how it's different from other children is still limited. So my son will say, for example, oh, I don't really know anything about farming. And then I'll proceed to give a 45-minute tour to college students where he's explaining why you need all these varieties of heritage chickens and how you intercrop fava beans to capture nitrogen for your tomatoes, who are heavy feeders. So they have a deep knowledge and a deep belonging. Nishima was overhearing me talk about supporting a sister organization with their strategic plan, and she said, well, have you thought about encouraging them to use appreciative inquiry model? So I just think they're going to be very employable. In fact, we've started hiring them. So Emmett does youth groups, and Nishima does a lot of kitchen management, and she also proofreads my grants for me.
I mean, a lot of the people that come here are really driven to change the world in what I think of as a better direction. People will come from everywhere, all over the country, and just to see how much they value our work and how much they want to be a part of it.
Soulfire Farm, in some ways, started as an idea when Jonah and I and our 2 infant-aged children were living in the south end of Albany, New York, and Albany, our neighborhood was termed a food desert by the USDA, meaning that even if you try really hard, it's almost impossible to get good food, to get fresh fruits and vegetables. So Jonah and I both had a long history of farming other people's land and had a dream of having our own land. And when our neighbors found out that we had those skills, we were really encouraged to find that land, grow food, and to bring it back into the neighborhood.
We purchased the land in December of 2006, and when we arrived, these soils were as about degraded as they could be, and we've really spent the last 5 to 6 years building our soils, really seeing it as the source of the nutrition for our communities.
Well, I think in regards to the production of our farm, first of all, and why we are focusing on delivering food into food desert neighborhoods, we actually prefer the term food apartheid, which is really the food system that we have right now, where certain people live in food opulence and have access to their Whole Foods and their Trader Joe's, and there are also a large percentage of Americans, mostly Black, Latino, and Indigenous Americans, who don't even have enough to eat, never mind high-quality food. And so the result of that is that even as our nation, rightly so, focuses attention on the rash of police killings against Black and brown people and mass incarceration of Black and brown bodies, we're actually 5 times more likely to die and be sick from diet-related illness than we are from all types of violence combined as Black people. So our farm share accepts, on a sliding scale, financial contribution for the foods. You don't need a car because that food's going right to your doorstep. Folks stay with us for many years. They come out to the farm, we go to their houses, we cook together. So I'm gonna ask you to just take a deep breath in and make sure you fill up your whole chest, your whole back, your whole belly, and then just let that breath out. And then let's do another one. We run training programs at various levels for beginners up through advanced on how to farm and how to access land and credit so that we can become independent farmers. And we also work with a lot of Black and brown youth. So when young people come, yes, they learn some farming skills and some cooking skills, but more important, it's about that reintroduction in a really whole and healthy way to the earth. So first of all, thank you all so much for coming. I know you came a really, really far way and had to get up so early in the morning. And I don't know what Ms. Maxwell told you about this farm, but we're really dedicated to food justice and dedicated to ending racism in the food system. So like everything you do today goes toward that mission. Like we're going to be in a few minutes taking care of some soil, and that soil will grow food for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to eat healthy food.
I think a very large goal of this farm, Soulfire Farm, is to spread the vision, the mission to other people so that they can continue this work. People come from very far away to come to our programs, and although that's awesome, it also really shows the need for this work in other places.
I think for me, what roots me and keeps me hopeful in the face of the machine is a Jewish teaching out of Pirkei Avot that says you are not obligated to complete the task, but neither are you free to desist from it. If I consider myself obligated to end climate chaos and to figure out how to feed the entire world, then I'm not going to be able to get out from under my covers. But I also can't desist from doing everything in my power toward those ends. And if I can inspire one person or 10 people or 100 people to do the same, that collective energy might be enough to shift the machine. And if it's not, and we lose, which is possible, I would rather go out knowing that I never gave up hope, that I always believed in a bright future. And in the process of building that bright future, I'm actually having a good life. And my children are having a really good life, and the people who come here are having a better life. And so the present moment is enriched by that work. So Emmett is going to be the star of one part of this music video, and his role is of an urban boy who's looking for leadership and guidance.
And hold it up, there you go, and toss. And then, and yum. There you go. Okay, now you're gonna walk out of the frame this way.
So my sister Naima and her partner Alixa are internationally acclaimed poets, performers, and activists with climbing poetry. when we were little girls, 6 and 7 years old, we start the junior ecologists kids club, and we'd go around defending forests and defending deer and picking up trash, and we had our little buttons and t-shirts that we made. She and I are really one heart and one soul in a lot of ways.
I'm so inspired by the work of my big sister, Leah. We've grown from the same pot.
The war on drugs is really one of the things that brought us together. This attack on Black and brown and poor communities that really got us talking and really starting to understand the intersections of oppression and how they impact my people so far away and her people, and particularly Black women who are the largest growing population in mass incarceration and in prisons. When we saw the impacts, we felt we needed to do something, and what we had at our hands was poetry, it was art, it was music.
And even from the moment Alexa and I met, we had a lot of synergy. It felt like we were meeting a long-lost soul sister, soul twins we used to call ourselves, because of our deep, deep, deep passion for creativity in many forms, combined with a really deep commitment to helping to spur the transformation that this world is so thirsty for. My deep care for this planet and for all the living inhabitants of it comes from a profound love of creation that isn't something forced. It doesn't take any effort. It's very innate and overflowing. I'm profoundly in love with a chance to be alive and to exist on this miraculous planet Earth and to be in community with other human beings. I think as much destruction as we're responsible for, we're a phenomenal species, you know? And I really believe that all of us who are alive right now, in some realm, made a choice to step into being part of this moment of shifting. That is really necessary if we're going to continue as human beings on the planet, you know, and to awaken into our various roles to be part of helping to change the story that we're walking into.
I think grieving is the first step. I think we need to grieve a lot. We need to cry a lot, and we need safe spaces to do so. And I think we try to do that in our performance. You have to be really hurt to hurt others. You know, when you're in a lot of pain, it's easy to inflict because it's familiar. When you start the process of healing, it becomes harder to hurt the other because you're conscious, you know, you're just awake to it. And that's all we need right now, is to just be awake to it. That's the first step, just be awake to it.
We survived the fires of Selma and Nagasaki, and we will survive Palestine. We survived Vietnam and Wounded Knee, Rwanda and Mississippi.
I very much believe that right now it's a battle of stories, and what story is gonna win? What is the narrative that is gonna surface to the very top, and the general population will believe, and then therefore their children will believe. And so everybody gets to play in that story. Everybody gets to write a line in that story.
A big part of the old story has given an enormous amount of value to something entirely worthless, which is money, paper, printed, you know, this incredible obsession with profit. We are crazed by money. The old story is centered so much around how we amass this worthless thing, you know, that obviously has value, tangible value in our world because of the story we've all subscribed to. But in the end, it isn't even backed by gold anymore, you know? It's numbers in a computer that people are killing each other over.
We are at the edge. We've been at the edge. If you look at climate, we have flown over the edge. You know, the train wreck has started and we're 20 cars back. I don't want to, and I try not to operate from a space of anger. And I feel like it's also important for us, especially as women, to tap into our rage. There's a power there. And then also to tap into our love even more so, and to tap into our joy even more so, but to not just deny it and be like, well, we're just happy, and well, if the thing crashes, whatever. No, man, like, I am frustrated. I'm extremely furious.
Dignity, justice, honesty, black and brown power, native sovereignty.
What I see happening is perhaps one of the largest grassroots movements in the history of this country. And to me, that's very hopeful, because people are so concerned that they are putting down petty differences and unifying around these collaborative efforts in a way that I've never seen before. And I do this work all over the world. And it's not just happening here, it's happening everywhere. I just came back from New Zealand, and the people there are doing the same thing.
On a Thursday, the community gathers at the farm. It's a chance to come together and celebrate Earth, the farm, each other, good food, good music.
It's truly amazing to witness 400 or 500 people and the overall vibe of the space being really mellow and safe. Lots of families and children. All these people who have been coming every week sort of take almost ownership over the overall space.
They're picking up on an energy that Chris and I were first drawn to in this particular area of the farm. You can see when they walk through the maple opening entrance into the gathering space, people who have never been there before, they take a moment and they just like, where am I? You know, and they feel it instantly.
I think it's one of the most vibrant, beautiful experiences I've ever been a part of. You know, I'm a part of this collective with great food and great people and people that care about the things that I care about, and then educating new people that come in every day, and it's just like a wonderful new experience every time.
I wonder if I'm going to be around when the trees I plant get this big. It's exciting to think of my son or grandchildren swinging from branch to branch, harvesting this fruit. These trees and working with nature has allowed me to sort of ground myself in a productive way of, a lot of friction that may come up when I witness all the horror in the world.
We are working together with this vision of coming together to start a community-supported agriculture farm, which originally was going to be in New Hampshire, where we grew up, but Vermont was a little bit more open to receive us, I think. From 2007 to now, it's been a process, almost a birthing process, and it's much, much, much beyond us at this point.
The community is very important in creating these spaces where it allows the individual to feel safe and to grow as well. Our whole survival is 100% dependent upon
a community. You know, if you look at the traditional or indigenous cultures, a lot of them, of say Vermont, the Abenaki, is very community oriented. And so their healing practice they would go off and have these individual expeditions because they were living so much of their life through a community paradigm that their healing was individual. You come to our realities now, we're so estranged from our culture and communities that I feel a lot of the healing can be done in community.
I really think it all comes down to everyone doing their own inner work and healing our traumas of our childhood, of our past lives, of our time on earth, just recognizing it and spending time to heal it. I really think it's by focusing on the self, first and foremost, is how you'll be able to bring the best service to your community, and by focusing on your community, how you're going to be able to best influence the global village. So it's kind of like a focusing in to have a greater effect out.
What if millions of people came together with a certain intention in meditation, focusing our energy this way? I think that we could really step into ourselves and really truly understand our power. They've been able to measure the science that when you walk into a room, you're emitting up to 10 feet in energy from your heart. Their readers, their scientific readers can measure that.
It sounds cliche, and every time I hear this, I think it means something different next time I hear it, but we truly are all one. And when we die, we find that out. I think that's the importance of oneness, is the more people realize that, the more promising our future on this planet will look. I know I'm changing, and quickly, and I think that's another aspect of it, is that change that is coming now is happening quickly. The cannibal giant, Giwok, he is a protector of the Earth Mother. And so we continue destroying the earth at our own peril. The Kogi, who I've worked with, talk about the gods of chaos and destruction, who have similar roles to Giwok. So their prophecies tell about a similar being. The only way for us to put Giwok back to sleep is for us to wake up. And so, you know, this is the moment.
Thank you all for coming. My name is Chris Wood. I am from the organization BALE, Building a Local Economy nearby, located in South Royalton. And I was the one who cooked up the idea of this last film that you saw called Dancing with the Cannibal Giant, New Stories for the Great Transition. It was 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, right here, that I walked in and saw the premiere showing of Wisdom to Survive, which was the first half of what you saw. Or I should say it was short segments. I always see that film now and I think, oh, what are the, what else what are the other gems that should come out? And I think in the ideal world, if I were to have an opportunity to do this, we would show all of Wisdom to Survive, but that would have made us a super long program, so we're not going to do that. So it was great to have the little reference. And the reason that I think that's great that we actually did the opening with the short Wisdom to Survive was to give a context, because I watched the film right here, and then subsequently I showed it in, I think, about 15 or 20 different towns around the region. and at the end of each one, that it would be applause, and we'd say, "Do you have any thoughts?" And people would say, "Yeah, what can I do? The forces are way too big, too overwhelming. It's too depressing, for me to have the capacity, or us even as a community, to actually get together and make a difference." And what I told Anne, filmmaker Anne, I said, what I want to see are what's the good news? How can we look at stories that are happening, people really being conscious of where they are and what the state of the world is, what the state of the climate crisis is, and are still moving ahead with power and vision and love and the motivation to try and create the kind of change that I, as an individual, that a community together could actually make the shift. So that's why the last film, the Dancing with the Cannibal Giant, was made. I don't think I want to say much more. I want to hand it over to Anne, because I want to give time now for some kind of sharing and feedback from the audience, which is an essential part of this whole program.
Thank you for coming. Is that live?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Eric is going to, if anybody has anything you would like to say, anything that came up for you, Eric will be bringing the microphone, because Macy is filming this, and it would be nice to have other people be able to hear everything. So I guess what I usually I say, well, do you have any thoughts, or what moved you? The thing that I've been thinking of is a lot of psychologists now are saying, is it helpful to scare people? There was a big article in the New York Times. This man who's just written a book called The Uninhabitable Earth had a preview in the New York Times a month ago, and the big headline was, "It's time to panic." And I think it is, realistically, if we could look dispassionately about it, it is time to panic, because the International Panel on Climate Change a year ago gave us 12 years to be able to turn this around. Otherwise, there'll be runaway climate change and tipping points, and then it will be unmanageable. So I think some of us know that. Some of us have another knowledge. I hope our young friends who came, and I'll introduce them later, I hope that they don't feel as defeated as I sometimes do. And I was just curious to know if there's any thoughts that you have about how you manage the knowledge of where we are and what our political life is like, so that change is not only difficult, but the policies that had been put in place are being methodically rolled back, so that 78 environmental policies that were in place to protect the environment have been rolled back, or are in the process of being rolled back in the last 2 years. 47 have already been rolled back. 31 are on the chopping block. Some are going to the courts, and maybe the courts will turn it back. So I think these are hard times, and I feel hopeful, because the alternative wouldn't be useful. But I'm just very wondering how other people are coping with these times. And then I think it would be hard enough to cope with these times if there were no such thing as climate change bearing down on us. So if you have any thoughts to share about that, or anything that struck you. If I silenced everyone.
I would say this, first of all, collectively is the answer. And I'm so excited about what you kids are doing in your generation. Because no, it's not so much that we're not going to be around, is that we can be around, and with your help, we can come to some, maybe make a more powerful statement on what we could do collectively. I'm in the, live in the Brownsville area. I'm part of the Planning Commission.
Who are you? It would be great.
Ray Shanis, and I know you.
No.
Anyway,
but
and
the television audience doesn't.
There you go. Anyway, and one of the things that became apparent to me as we're redoing our town plan, just from the practical aspect of how a town can look at this, and then we can go into the collectiveness of all our towns, is we've got to make sustainability, climate change in our town plans. We've got to put it in there as no longer a topic, but something we've got to do something about. So all that being said, what we've got to do now somehow is get the media, and I don't know if anybody's here from Vermont Standard or any of the newspapers, they should have been, and we've got to start playing the game of getting the media to get on this topic more than it is, because there's too many other topics they're wasting time with.
Well, we have a good media here, and he'll be showing this on Channel 8.
Thank you. So that being said, I don't want to monopolize this, but I'm motivated. I'm excited about what you guys did, and I think it's no matter how you look at it, it's going to be the collective mass of how we all deal with this together. And there is hope. It's not impossible. We're going to resolve this. I mean, I think to me, what's more important is that that we stay positive, and we all individually have our task of being part of it. I've always gotten tired, in a final thought, of people talking about a problem and not doing anything about it. My goal in life right now, I'm part of Gun Sense Vermont, has been to take action. Not read about it, not talk about it, but get involved. Thank you.
Great. Anybody else have a thought? And we need to wait for the mic, because Macy needs that too.
Anna, if you could ask you, please.
Yes.
I'm the other half. I'm Lynn Shanis, Brownsville. And the only way out of the political situation is vote. Vote. Don't stay home. Don't encourage other people to fall by the wayside. And then, as my dad used to say, take care of your own little corner. What can you do yourself in your house? Crazy things that in the past I thought I was too busy to do, I do. You know, you compost. You try to reuse things instead of using them and throwing them away. My husband got on to bamboo towels that you buy on a roll. Anyone heard of these?
Paper towels.
They're not, well, they're like paper, but they're thicker. But instead of using paper towels, and I haven't bought a roll of paper towels now in 8 months, you wipe up with these and you wash them. And then I fold them, put them in a little container near the roll, which I have plenty on, and we gave 12 rolls away for Christmas presents. So, you know, a little thing. And the whole plastic bag thing in the supermarket, they're now marketing all these bags that you can take to put your fruit and vegetables in, or when you go to, you know, farmers markets. Anyway, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Peg Brightman. Hi, from Queechee. Just wanted to piggyback.
It is on, I think. You have to just hold it real close.
I will try to talk louder. Peg Brightman from Queechee. I just wanted to thank the first speaker and say I would love to see some action plans that involve entire communities. Ban plastic bags. Should be some simple things we all can do. Yes, we can do what we can do individually, but we have to band together.
I'm Deborah Newhoff, Woodstock, and just saying, piggybacking this, I think last Sunday we attended an event down at South Woodstock on the bees and saving the bees and learning what we can do in the environment to save the bees and have flower gardens and various things for the hummingbirds and for our environment in that way. So I think everything that's being said is very helpful. And, and there was a person there from the state of Vermont who was looking at people's property where you can actually designate, and they will, I don't know if there's a fund or whatever, I think it was, or grants or whatever, so that you would do your milkweed, you would use part of your property so that you can, a field that you have, so they're recognizing that. So that was encouraging, just to have people coming out and being interested in that, and then seeing how the state was there representative to help us think of how we could use our properties for, that's our environment. We need to keep it going.
Does anyone else have a question?
Hi, my name's Melissa Straighten. I'm from Barnard. And a couple of things that I just wanted to remind everybody is that we have a lot of purchasing power, and where we spend our money matters. And so avoiding large corporations, I recently, a while ago, I closed my account at Bank of America, invested in our, my funds in our local bank. I tried very hard not to buy things from Amazon. And I don't shop at places like Walmart. And I think that it's very important not only to think about not bringing plastic bags to the grocery store, but I think it's very important to think about where you spend your money and how you spend your money. That was one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to say is I really, really loved what Quincy Saul said in the film about how all these different subgroup movements are coming together and that they're becoming the precursor of the place we need to get to. I thought that was absolutely stunning and just really opened up a view that I didn't necessarily have before. So,
thank you. We don't have to drag out questions or comments unless you really want to give one, because we have something good happening. So if I'll take one or two more if anybody has a. Joby?
I'd like to ask Allison what we're doing as a state.
Well, Zach's here too.
Allison can handle it.
Yeah, I can. Hi, Allison Clarkson. I have the honor of being one of your 3 state senators for Windsor County, and well, it's a challenge, as you know. I also, Lynn, was raised with parents who taught me to think globally and act locally. And so I don't think we're too small to have an impact, and we're never too small to take a start individually. That being said, there are lots of good things happening in the State House, despite what you think. We are really focusing on transportation and on housing, as they are our 2 biggest contributors to greenhouse gases, and they are the 2 biggest things we can actually have an impact on individually and as a state, and as a yes, in those 2 areas. So you're going to see a lot of measures in transportation, in public transportation, in electric vehicles. Zach, chime in if you have some additional thoughts. But we're going to be doing. You're going to see quite a bit of investment in continuing to improve our electric vehicle situation, our public transportation system, and in a bunch of other areas. We, as you may or may not have read, we have a bill that I've been very involved in the Senate that's gone to the House and is coming back, the banning the use of single plastic bags, which is a small step, banning plastic straws and styrofoam. Small things, but anyone who saw that National Geographic volume on plastics could not act this year. And so as a state, hopefully as a state, we will be there at the end of this session if the governor signs that bill. We're also doing a lot in aiming to try and continue to do a lot in weatherization, particularly with low-income people. As you know, we had a goal of weatherizing 80,000 homes by 2020. We're not going to be able to do that. I think we've weatherized probably 25,000. One of the challenges, so we're doing quite a bit for low income people. We need to expand our very cutting edge efficiency Vermont model, which has been on the electric side, been a terrific model for the rest of the world, for the rest of the country. We need to expand it to thermal efficiencies as well, which we've begun, but needs to go much further. But quite honestly, turning the ship around, turning this Titanic that we're on with the addiction to oil that we have, that is embedded and infused in every aspect of our lives, in our buildings, in our living patterns. So I love your point about planning, because suburbs were impossible without cheap oil. Anyone who's seen The End of Oil, what was the name of that wonderful film we saw? And that was a couple years ago when it was the end of oil. Anyway, doesn't matter.
The party's over.
Yeah, it so much of what we've done in terms of how we've built our world are dependent on cheap oil. And so many of our clothing, I'm wearing something made of micro polyester. I didn't even know micro polyester existed. All oil, so much of our world. To instantly turn that ship around is going to be very hard. It's going to take us time to wean ourselves from this addiction, and both personally, politically, and in terms of everything we do. We're working hard at the State House. I've introduced a bill in the Senate, which is, I think, probably going to get more work on in the House. The Global Warming Solutions Act, which takes our goals. We have very lofty goals about what we can accomplish by 2050. We're going to turn those goals into requirements, so that as we do everything in the state, we have to meet those requirements. There are goalposts that we have to meet before we can go forward. Hopefully that bill, remember, we're in a biennium. Don't be too discouraged with us, because we have 2 years, hopefully, to get the major policy pieces that we want to put together by. So look at us in May of 2020, which is hopefully we'll have accomplished quite a bit. Are there things to add? I'm not.
Zach is going to be speaking.
Yeah, no. Oh, you're speaking later. Oh, wow.
Later, I think, is now, because I want to get everybody out. One more question? Yeah, one more comment.
I'd like to talk about, just mention two.
Could you?
I'm Murray, and I live in South Pomfret. There are two citizen-initiated resolutions or proposals for bills in the state legislature. There's two citizen-initiated resolutions in the state legislature. One is a bill that would ban the construction of any further new fossil fuel infrastructure in the state of Vermont. And the other one is a resolution brought by the Citizens Against Nuclear Bombers in Vermont that would block the basing of the F-35 nuclear bomb system at Burlington Airport. That, in addition to its military consequences, has phenomenal, huge environmental consequences. There's things that you can do about seeing that both of those bills advance, those proposals advance, and I'd be happy to talk more about that later. Bye.
They've actually been sent to committees. Yes. I'm co-sponsoring the one in the Senate. They've actually both been sent to committees, and they just need encouragement to take them up.
And Zach is on that.
I think we will move on now. Thank you so much. I guess, Zach, it would be one of the reasons to gather you here was to have concrete suggestions of what a person might do if they said, "What can I do?" And so we invited Zach, who's our new state rep, but also has been involved with Sustainable Woodstock. And Sally Miller is going to tell us about this very exciting new community visioning project that is just getting underway. And Kat Robbins will tell us about volunteer opportunities and what she's doing at the high school and her place-based education. So they're going to speak briefly, and then Michael Caduto, who's our not so new anymore executive director of Sustainable Woodstock, will send us home. But before that happens, after the three speakers who are going to briefly tell you what you can do, and there's sign-up sheets outside for each one. Eric Dorfman, one of our 7 youth teachers, mentors here today, is got a poem to read. So let's start with Zach, since Allison just finished, and thank you, Allison, for this summary.
You want me to come up there, Ann?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
It's better for TV.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Ann, so much for inviting us to come and speak today. I recognize most of you, so I'm sure a lot of what I'll have to say is not going to be anything new, but for our TV audience, I have lots to say. I'm Zachariah Ralph, and I'm the program coordinator for Sustainable Woodstock. And many of the people here in the crowd have actually been very active in Sustainable Woodstock. But just to give you a little bit of background about us, our mission is to inspire, educate, and empower everyone to live environmentally, economically, and socially responsible lives. We service the areas of Woodstock, Pomfret, Barnard, Reading, Heartland, and Bridgewater. And we have action groups. We have a very small staff. It's myself as program director, Michael Cuduto, our executive director, and Carrie Rosenthal, who's now in charge of our gardens. Also really excited that Sally Miller is going to be speaking later. She was the founder of our organization, executive director for 9 years, founder with people like Ann McSood and Joby Thompson and Barbara Berry and Allison Clarkson. So many people here in the audience here. So like I said, we have action groups. That means that we depend on our volunteers to actually do the work because we are so small. So much of our work is bound in engaging people in the process itself. We have sort of a funnel system that we like to use that engages people at different levels. So, for example, if you are really active in this and you have friends that want to get involved in sustainability work in our communities, you might bring them to our climate change and sustainability film series. 0 energy required. Just come and entertain yourself and learn about something new. They happen on the 4th Tuesday of every month. This is in partnership with Pentangle Council of the Arts. We also have a monthly green drinks social hour. Again, this is purely social with a very little bit of education built in there. And these happen on the 3rd Thursday of every month, usually at Worthy Kitchen. But this is an opportunity to be social. It's part of an international phenomenon where people get together and talk about climate change related initiatives. But as you get more engaged in our work, we have plenty of volunteer opportunities, and I'll talk a little bit about them. Our largest and most active group, which recently changed its name, is the Sustainable Woodstock Energy and recently added Transportation Action Committee. And we work throughout the year. We meet monthly, and we work on energy-related and now transportation-related initiatives. So right now we're working on a Weatherize campaign, which is a statewide initiative initiated by Efficiency Vermont and piloted by Vital Communities. And this is a program to help us achieve the goals of the comprehensive energy plan that Allison was referring to, where we're actually weatherizing enough houses to meet those very ambitious goals that we are not currently achieving. So we are in the midst of this right now. As a volunteer group, we need help in connecting with those people that have requested audits and have received an outline of what they might do for their work, and asking them to follow up with it. Because it's one thing to start, it's another thing to finish, so we need that help there. We also have a solar showcase that we launch in the summertime during our Taste of Woodstock event. This is an opportunity to connect people in the Woodstock area with our solar contractors. So they're actually meeting and having a conversation. Maybe you hadn't thought about it before, but this is a nice large social event. So we need help with volunteers to come and table at this and talk to people as they come. It usually includes some fun raffle events. We also have a low-income weatherization program. This is meant to this was designed to fill the niches of our other low-income weatherization programs across the state, of which there are many. But sometimes they miss things like interior storm windows or some of those high-value weatherization initiatives, efforts that one of our low-income programs cannot fulfill. So we need help with volunteers to, one, provide references for folks that need that assistance, but also contractors that can actually come in and build framing for windows and things like that. And finally, we through that group, this is part of our transportation. We have a statewide initiative that's being launched through Efficiency Vermont is launching a statewide initiative called Go Vermont. This is a carpooling and ride-sharing program to help us reduce the amount of driving hours we're spending on the road, or at least sharing those driving hours. And so this month's Green Drinks on May 16th at Worthy Kitchen will be launching with Hartford and Lebanon and Heartland and a number of other communities the Go Vermont campaign. So this isn't a volunteer thing. We just need you to go ahead and do it. So carpool, ride share anytime you can. My personal favorite piece, there's lots of ways to get involved with climate change and addressing our environment. And that's, I think, what makes this very complicated for a lot of people is where do you get started? So we just talked about energy issues. One piece that's not talked a lot about but is essential is our forests and the role of carbon storage and sequestration. So for the last 2 years, anybody that's been following my emails or our emails knows that we have been working with a group of foresters, scientists, and local activists to engage our community, Forest Parks and Recreation Department in potentially managing a forest for stored and sequestered carbon. For those of you that don't know what this means, it means taking the carbon out of the atmosphere. This is really important because we have enough carbon in the atmosphere right now to drive global temperatures up by 1.5 to almost 2 degrees Celsius. That's without putting anything in the atmosphere right now. So if we wish to actually affect climate change, we need to figure out ways, and preferably non-technological ways, of taking carbon out of the atmosphere. And an exciting part about this is we just recently partnered with Dartmouth, and Dartmouth College is providing 10 students to help us do research on the different ways that we can increase our forest's ability to store and sequester carbon. Much of this research is being actually led by a researcher here in Vermont, Dr. William Keaton at the Rubenstein School at UVM. So we are leading the way right here in Vermont. We are also doing some tree plantings. If you're interested in signing up, we're doing 3 acres of tree planting in riparian buffer zones in West Woodstock. Somebody had mentioned that we need a community-wide effort on plastics. Sustainable Woodstock has been working on creating a voluntary plastic ban here in our own community with our businesses, asking them to figure out ways, and we're working closely with Change the World Kids as well, to audit our businesses, determine ways that they can reduce their plastic consumption so that we can and find alternatives for them so that we have a more sustainable solution. Fortunately, we also have some legislation going through the House, through the legislature right now, which would ban plastic statewide, as Allison mentioned. And the last bit that I'll talk about is our East End cleanup. We have the East End used to be called the jungle. It was an eyesore on our community, and a very energetic and awesome group of volunteers has been working on that for a decade now to clean it up, and it is beautiful. We now have edible gardens with raspberry and blueberry bushes, lots of trees. We had a Eagle Scout build benches for us down there, and we have really big, bold ambitions for this park. So, and there is always a need for volunteers there, as far as I know. Please get in touch with us if you have any interest in participating in any of these projects. The last bit I want to talk about, I don't know how much time I have, Ann, but am I doing okay? 2 minutes? Okay. Last bit I wanted to talk about is I'll put my go from my program director hat to my legislator hat, which is I'm committed to these things, to these initiatives, to addressing climate change. And there's a lot of legislators in our House that are also committed to these things. We want to make the biggest, boldest impacts on our community that we possibly can. And the frustration, the trouble is that for many of us, we don't know how our constituents will react. And so we fear that if we do something bold, and I'm not referring to myself or Allison, I think that both her and I feel very comfortable where we are, that we are acting within the interest of our community. But if we do something too bold, that we won't be elected again, we'll scare people away. And a big example of this is our farmers and our forest products industry. This is an essential part of the culture and the identity of our state, of our economy. And oftentimes the initiatives that they're run contrary to climate change solutions, or at least it seems that way. So when we work to put a tax on fuel, all of a sudden the price of doing agriculture in this state or logging in the state, which is already expensive, becomes even more expensive. So then it comes down to an issue of capitalism. And I have to say this probably is the biggest problem about how we actually move forward in addressing climate change is capitalism. It is our economic system that prevents us from putting these initiatives in place. Sustainability and moderation do not fit into an economic system that depends on constant growth. How do we change that? Put pressure on your legislators. But the last piece I'll say, even though that last piece I was going to say before, but I do a lot of thinking about why we do what we do. Why do I put myself through a climate change film series every month that talks about the impending doom of our world, and why do people continue come to our film series? I don't know. Well, we do these things. I do it because I love the people in my community. I love the fact that we are the most open state in the country. You can come to talk to Allison Clarkson, myself, and any other legislature. You can call us on our phone and we will talk to you for 30 minutes. Allison especially will do that. But I love that I just love that I know so many people in my community. I love my community. I have something to fight for. What about the rest of our country? What are we fighting for? Are we fighting for a little man with orange skin? Are we fighting for income disparity? What are we fighting for? So when I think about climate change, it's not just about, and I forget who said it in the film, it's not about what the end result is, but when we work to achieve those things, why are we doing it? Well, I think it's important that when we're working towards these changes, that we're not only focusing on the end result, but we're also focusing on that we are doing it to save a planet that we love. So this is an opportunity, not a challenge. It is not something that we have to conquer, but it is an opportunity for us to build a future which we are actually proud of, that we want to live, and that we want to bring our children into, and their grandchildren as well. So part of my job is not just to bring people into the fold, educate you about what's going on, but to also give you something that motivates you to continue to fight for our future. So with that, I will hand it over to Sally. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. I think, shall we get Kat Robbins up here next? I remember Kat was an early sustainable Woodstock person. That's how I got to know her, and she'll tell you a little bit about what she's involved in now. Also, there are sign-up sheets for her program and Zach's program, and Sally, did you have a sign-up sheet, Sally? Yes. So if you want to even sign up just to be called so that you can tell these people, all the volunteers you've gathered.
Hi, my name is Kat Robbins, and I am lucky enough to get to work with some of these folks and Luis Spango and Beth Hazlett in the Center of Community Connections at Woodstock High School. And community seems to be a really big theme that came up in the film and in what Zach said and what Allison was saying, and I'm sure what Sally is going to talk about as well. And our vision at the C3 program at Woodstock is to really sort of take down those walls between the school and the community so that the entire community becomes a really rich learning environment for all of our students, so that they don't ever have to say, why are we learning this? that they know, because there's a direct application of what they're learning. And we know that our community has a wide range of really rich resources and people and knowledge and experience, and that we as educators and teachers, we don't have all of that in our building, but as a community we do. And so our vision is to really reach out to the community a lot more and to have students working in internships, independent studies, service learning projects in the community that allow them to explore what they're curious about and also to apply what they're learning in some of their other classes in a real-world context. So we're looking for volunteers to do everything from sit on a job panel, a career panel for our students, our 8th grade students who are just trying to figure out what they might want to do, to hosting students in a job shadow. All of our 10th graders go out once a year and do a day-long job shadow with a career or profession that they just might be curious about, or that they've known they wanted to be a surgeon since they were for. Or we need folks to act as a mentor for students who are pursuing independent studies in everything that you could possibly imagine, any topic, and folks to host our students in an internship experience as well. So that's where one more thing. We also need like guest speakers to come in and work with our students as they're wrestling with some of these real world problems as well. Maybe you have a content area of expertise that you think could provide a different perspective or a lens for our students. Or you just want to come in and hear what the students are doing and offer some feedback. We need all of those things. So we do have a sign-up sheet out there and a little bit more information on here that I'll leave out with that too. But thank you for coming. Thank you for caring. Thank you for signing up.
Sally Miller doesn't need an introduction, I don't think, but she's recently become the executive director of the Economic Development Commission, and she's on the steering committee of the Vision.
So I'm actually the coordinator for the Economic Development Commission, so not really an executive director. But I'm going to talk about one project that that the EDC is funding right now, and that is a community visioning project. Over the past few years, the EDC has funded some studies like housing in Woodstock. They've studied some studies of the East End. We're working on a village revitalization project right now. And it became clear that there were no community priorities, that the community input hadn't really been set in terms of looking at us as an entire community, where we want to go, what we want to do. And that sort of fits in with the conversation that we're having today as well, because we're looking through this community visioning project to get input from all of our residents. And when we're talking Woodstock, we understand that we're a hub, that we're part of the supervisory union. So there are other communities that really have an important piece in what happens here in our town and as the region as a whole. So I'm going to just say that this is really new and completely, I mean, we're still formulating this, so it's not going to come out really smoothly. But it's called Our Woodstock, Our Future. And it's a community planning process that will help the people who live, work, and play in Woodstock choose the future they want for our community. So we're going to be starting next month. We'll have a kickoff meeting actually right here in this room on May 29th. And we're going to start by gathering thoughts from everybody that we can reach in this community, and hopefully that's everybody. And we're going to have a variety of ways for people to connect. Folks that were here back in 2006 may remember that we did a community visioning process with the Vermont Council for Rural Development. That was a very short, very kind of concentrated effort that took just a few weeks. We're going to be gathering information for the next few months. And then by the end of summer, what we want to do is pull all these ideas together and sort of group them in a way and have the community give input on what they think are the most important issues. So you may say, okay, we think climate change is really important, and we want to somehow work on this. We'll develop an action plan that then we can put into our town plan, that we can include in other projects that are going on, so that we know that we've talked to everybody. We have a way forward, a path forward. So basically the reason you should get involved is so your voice can be heard. And I'm talking to everybody here. And there are ways that you can participate. So with our kickoff meeting in May, we will continue through the summer. There are going to be various ways. Right now, I have little cards out there on the table. You can even put down the thing I love most about Woodstock is, or my one wish for Woodstock is, and include these. We have a way you can text them to us. We'll also be doing a survey. We have little boxes that you can bring to community meetings and actually take it out to your own groups and talk to other people. And we'll be exploring other ways to connect within our community. And this will happen over the summer months. And then at the end, as I said, we will hopefully, keep our fingers crossed, have another community picnic, which some of you may remember from previous years, and be able to gather people together, starting to get input at that, and then continue on for some other time. We have hired a facilitator We're working with Community Workshop. They're up in Bethel. They do a lot of this. They're pretty amazing folks. So they are really helping us pull together this project right now. We have a steering committee of about 8 people right now. We would love to have some more people join us. I know a number of people in this room have been part of this conversation. It's taken us over a year to get to this point, so we're pretty excited that it's finally happening. But we would love to have anybody who wants to be part of the conversation. You know, you can join at any point, but if you want to be part of the steering committee or take on a task of engaging with a particular group, just let me know. I have a sign-up sheet out in the lobby, and we'd love to hear from you and have you be part of all of this. Thank you.
So I would just like to introduce the students, and maybe as I call your name, you could just stand up. We have Tucker Odom from Montpelier, Bruno John, sorry, no comma there, from Montpelier. Christina Martsky, is that how you pronounce it? And also from Montpelier. Natalie Strayton from Woodstock. Willow Carr from Woodstock. Josie Gillen from Waterbury. And Eric Dorfman from Woodstock. And thank you guys for coming and making this trip. We appreciate it so much. Thank Grady Howe and Marsh and the Billings Farm for giving us this space and helping us out. And before Michael sends you off, I would ask Eric to come up. And he's going to test. Is this on still? Yes. Needs to go really close. Eric saw the Cannibal Giant last summer. His mom took him up to Fable Farm where they had a screening. And it made a big impression on him. And he's written a poem in response to it that he would like to do for you now. Thank you, Eric.
As natives from the Amazon jungle would say, the problem with Western man is he has severed his connection with nature and spirit. Ooh, from deep within the jungle, a mighty roar rattles trees and rumbles like earthquakes from shifting tectonic plates. The cannibal giant awakes. A guardian of Gaia woken, here to assist the consuming of the planet so Mother Earth can grow something new. Consume and consume till the consumer consumes himself. On this planet of stardust, we are all connected as one. Fact often neglected just as the mother and her son. Perception seems to have fogged our reflection. Clouded gaze, we no longer see ourselves in the mirror of perception. A new image is formed. Clouded by greed, we end up dominating what we see. How could this have happened? Forgotten connection, forgotten source of our mother's great womb, forgotten memories leading us to certain doom. We just continue to consume ourselves, each other, and of course, our mother. A rooted prophecy starting in 3000 BC, Sumer with the story of Gilgamesh, planting the seed of institutionalized patriarchy in our now chained society. On this earth, we are all connected to the animals on which we feed and the plants that let us breathe. We are all children of Mother Earth, and she is connected with the whole universe. Science is the new religion, so don't believe me. Listen to the studies. Schwarzschild proton expressing ancient knowledge, quantum field showing inseparable connection between observer and the observed. Although we may look different, the essence deep within is the same. Underlying unity within the diversity. We are the cells of the universe, reflexology. And what is projected outwards is a reflection of our psychology. Root of all problems can be put simply as an illusion of separation, a root that connects to the tree of the culture we see, capitalist modernity, based on a vicious human nature of exploitation and greed. Any idea of separation is an illusion. The inner universe is the same as the outer universe. Awareness is simply a game of duality. Simply, the universe is becoming aware of itself through our eyes. We must unite and stand together, fight to change the prophecy, and put the cannibal giant back to sleep, back to sleep. Back to sleep. Rest in peace, humanity. Could I take one moment to say something quickly? So this poem was inspired by this film, Dancing with the Cannibal Giant. And it's actually a song that is going to be part of an album I'm producing. And this song is actually called Oneness. And I've been scrambling to try to find ways to finance such an album. And I've been selling books that Quincy Saul has written, a fellow that you saw in Wisdom to Survive, the first part of the film. And the graphic novels, and if anyone is interested in just checking out these books, even just to look at them, it's really powerful material, and it's really transformative work that he's put together about everything we've talked tonight and beyond. So yeah, if you guys have any interest, just talk to me after.
Nice job. Good memory. So I'd like to just start by honoring Anne and Bill and all who are involved with the film, and all of you for being here tonight. So my job is to send you home. An easy job, I guess, but what is home really? And I'm listening to all the different things that were shared this evening. It seems like home is often sharing a space with people with whom you have something in common in your core, in your center. So I think that this is a home here right now. So you don't have to go very far to get home. Also, to think about what Zach was talking about with our film series, this comes up a lot. And I don't know exactly what, you're probably about 16, 17, 15. I've been doing work on Earth stewardship since I was about 13, when some developers came to bulldoze a pond where we used to skate during the winter and catch frogs. So it was the threat to something I loved that got me into doing what I'm doing, and I've been doing it ever since for a few years now. But if you take the word home and just change one letter to hope, I think that's what Zach was kind of alluding to. With the film series, why do we keep showing films that sometimes people come out of the movie smiling, sometimes they come out of the movie like they did with the one about the oceanographer that we were looking at, and that people were crying because of the things that they'd seen. They had tears in their eyes. And so what is hope, and how does that keep you going? And I think that's really a really essential piece of what we're doing. So Teddy Roosevelt said, do what you can with what you have where you are. So the work that we're doing, nuts and bolts today, we were over at the Woodstock Union High School parking lot accepting 5,000 pounds of electronics that needed to be recycled from people's attics, garages, and other places, and almost 5,000 pounds of paper that needed to be shredded that people had brought over. So, yeah, it's a lot, almost 5 tons of material. So doing the hard nuts and bolts work is really important, but also having some sense of hope and inspiration is really important as well. And one of my favorite sayings is that the world is full of people who gave up just before they were about to succeed. And so it's important to keep that power going, that thought, that positive energy going, because you never know when you're just about to succeed. I finished a book a few years ago that took me 10 years to finally get going. And I did it with a crowdfunding campaign, so we could talk about that a little bit. So one of my favorite themes, I don't know if any of you have read Emily Dickinson's poem about hope. But I have one that I thought of some years ago, and it kind of goes like this. And it's a good poem, I think, for this time, because we often feel like we're moving through a dark sky. So that smallest amount of light is what can keep us going. So hope is a shooting star that streaks across your heart and lingers in that beating sky, never to depart. So let's all just hang on to those little bits of light, and eventually the sky will begin to brighten up, the sun will rise again, and all the things that we've done individually and together will cause that sunrise to happen. So thank you all for coming.